Hairlines, probably the most single important thing that you need to produce incredible SMP. When I first came into the industry, I would just draw on a hairline thinking that I would know where it should go, what it should look like. What I found was pretty quickly I needed a system in place to make sure I had 3 elements, and that would be the symmetry, the shape and the finish on point every time for every client. So I'm going to show you my 5-point hairline which creates these 3 things, guaranteed. So creating a hairline, I use an eyeliner pencil, I use a ruler just to make sure, like, if I need to take any measurements. And what I'll do, I'll use a few different methods all mixed together to make sure everything's in the right place. So the first thing I'm looking for is symmetry. Once I've got the symmetry, then I can work off of that and create the shape. And before we start that, we can get the client to lift his eyebrows up. So what we want to do, we never want to take the hairline too far forward. So there's a few different ways of finding that out. One of them is to work behind the muscle on the head. So if I ask Carl to lift his forehead, and you'll see we create a muscle just here. So sometimes you'll get a guy and it'll be as simple as just sketching behind this muscle, okay, just behind or on top, and that will give us the natural shape. That's it, keep it pushed up. That would give us Carl's natural shape. If his hair was still growing, then it would kind of be in that shape, you know. The finish on it would be like either lighter in the corners or lighter at the front, but that is the kind of shape that naturally suits him. And we can tell straight away that will be a really natural look for him. Like, Carl is after this kind of look, and we would call that a slightly receded look. And I want to fade out that front edge. But before we get to this point, we don't want to just like take it by chance that this is in the same area as this. We want to make sure for 100% that we've got the symmetry in place. So from here, this is where I add my 5-point hairline, then I'll go back and change the shape. So if I just rub this off, and then we can do the 5-point hairline. Okay, so we need to find out where our starting point is. You know, how far down do we go? With SMP, we never want to push it too far. We want to stay slightly reserved. So we've already marked out this line that was behind the muscle. So we know at the furthest point we can come to here, okay? Also, things that I look for would be that any last remaining hairs that are there. On Carl here, we're probably looking around about this area where he's got 2 darker areas. So we've now got a point here and we've got a point here. Another good way, and I do this on everybody, the head is split into thirds, all right? So for good symmetry on somebody, like from the bridge to the bottom of their nose is usually the same distance as the bottom of their nose to the bottom of their chin. You can't see it that clearly because Carl's got a nice long beard, but that distance there will be the same as the bottom of the nose to the bridge, and then you go up from the bridge to a point up there, okay? And then that brings us out right in the middle of them 2 lines that we've already created. So we now know this line in the middle gives us that symmetry of the head in thirds. So that's a really good starting point. So the darkest hairs on Carl are up here. He can get away with coming this low, with staying behind that muscle, and his head split into thirds comes to that middle line there. So for me as an artist, I would suggest to Carl, we fill in this area with the darker pigment, and then as we come past there, that's where we're going to produce a really soft faded hairline. So his hairline in effect will come down to here, but the majority of it will be behind. So we now know that that is a decent starting point. Obviously with the client, you're going to get their feedback. Are they comfortable with it in this position? But for me, that's how you find out where your starting point is. Once you've got that in place, we then need to find a central point. So for me, I'll work off the center of the bridge. We don't work off the nose, just in case the nose is slightly crooked. You don't want to get it off center. So we come off the bridge and we can just mark a line through the middle there. Okay, so we've got a central point to work off of. Here's my 3 lines. Last remaining hair. This is where it was in thirds, and this is the furthest point forward we want to come. So from here I've got a perfect working point to come off, and then that would be my first point on the 5-point hairline. Okay, so we've found point number 1. Now we need to find points 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so the way to do that is you need to find a couple of points that go into the temple areas and a couple of points that come into the profile. So I'll talk about the profile area first and what to look for in SMP. Now, on the side profile, like with SMP, you want to do as little ink as possible, like to keep it as natural as possible. So I always recommend to clients that they don't come past the eye socket. So usually I like to feel around for the eye socket and then make a little mark on each side. And then when I've got them marks, that also gives me the symmetry of both sides, and I'll work up from there, okay? So if I just do that on Carl. Okay. Mark on his eye socket there, and on the other side. And then when I work off of there, I can see I'm always coming back round to the front of the client to double check everything. And a lot of what I do, I drop down to the eye level of the client, because the client's eye level is what they are going to see as well. So it's really important that you do that. All right. So once we've got them markings there, I now need to find where we're going to have the temple areas. So where I've already marked out behind that muscle earlier, I know I need to stay behind that muscle, okay? So I'll drop down, and it's as if you had a straight line going straight through the scalp. On this point where we're gonna go darker, we can use that line to mark off the points on the side. So as if a ruler was going straight through someone's scalp, I now want to drop down and look so that I can get them level, okay? So just behind the muscle there, keeping it level, we can put a little mark. I'll swap hands and I'll make another little mark on the other side. Okay, so they're just a rough guide for me. So I've got these marks, and then it's a matter of like matching these up. So the way I need to do that is I need to find the side profile. So the side profile, I'm going to work off of the eye socket, but then you've got the problem of what angle are you going to work off of. So what I like to do is use a little guide. So you can use a guide of maybe the edge of someone's mouth. So if it's the edge of Carl's lips, we can come in, say, 1 inch from there, and then I can use that. So whatever I choose on this side, I'm gonna have to choose on the other side. So I'll choose about 1.5 inch gap from there. I'll run my pencil line up all the way, and you could even make a mark down there if you wanted to give yourself a guideline. But coming up from the eye socket at that angle, up to and then in and around almost where I've made that mark earlier on the temple. Then when I come back round to the other side, I can look to the lip again, and we come about 1.5 inches back again. So that will give me the opportunity to use the same angle as the other side. Again, I'll come off of the marking I've already made and come straight up to in and around. the marking from before. Then it's really important for me to come back around the front and look, and you'll get a vision of if it's on or off, you know? So you might be slightly out, you might be slightly bang on, but because we've worked off of these markings, and because we've worked off of this marking, we now know that they're at the same angle. From there, we can make adjustments if we need to. So with the same angle there and the same angle on both sides, we can then look, these points here, which I want to be level with each other, we also need to make sure they're level with each other at the top. So if Carl dips his head forward, what we want to do from this point at the front, if we were to join up like a semicircle and then we was to put a ruler across the top, we would need this to create a straight line and a semicircle, okay? And if we've got that shape, then we know we've got the symmetry coming, okay? So for me, I'll be looking there so I can see the little markings that I made earlier. One is kind of in place and the other one is slightly further forward, okay? So now, I'll run that line over the top. Now we've got 2 points where they cross. Okay, so with them 2 points in place, when we lift back up, we should be able to take these points in and around that area, and then we can gradually join them up with point 1, which we found earlier. Okay, so we're now building up our hairline and the symmetry, okay? So we've now got point 1. We just need to double check everything. We drop down, see, does it look equal? Is it equal from the top? Is it equal from the profile? Is it equal from that profile? So the other bit you need to do is find what length you're going to use on the side profile. And this is going to be 0.2, 0.3. We can even write them in because we found them now. 2, 3. And to find 0.4 and 5 on the side profiles, we can just measure. I find most clients on a side profile, no matter what shape they're having, usually on natural hair, if natural hair was growing before it started curving back in, it would be at about 3.5 to 4 centimeters. So if we mark out from 0.2 to here, 3.5 on there, and we can do the same on the other side, okay? So we'll do the same on the other side, from the third point, 3.5. So now we've got 4, and 5. We've now got all 5 points in place, and from there we can now start working off of a shape. But with them 5 points in place and the way that we've done it, we know without a shadow of a doubt we've got 100% symmetry. Now I need to work on the shape, and the shape is what I've already agreed with the client through the consultation and through this process. So using the 5 points, I can work off of the shape. Once I've worked off of the shape with Carl, we're going to be creating a slightly receded look, like with a soft finish at the front. If this client wanted to stay with it shaped up and defined, then you could literally just use these lines that you've created. But for Carl, we're going to change the shape slightly, okay? So we're going to keep the front where it is, and he wants it slightly round, but he wants it slightly receded into the corners. So if I just turn Carl's head, and again, we're just using symmetry off of equal sides, like we can come, and from this area, I will start to create a little curve coming back into my third point. As I come past that third point, I'm just creating a little curve coming round to 0.5 over here. And we can mark that off because we don't really want to be coming any lower than there. Okay? And then once we've done this side, then we can start creating it on the other side. Okay, so again, just slightly curving it back, working up to point number 2, which I created earlier. And then we can curve that around to 0.4. So now we've got that slightly receded shape. Okay, so we've got all the symmetry in place. Okay, and we're creating our shape. So at this point, this is where we can start taking away these other lines that we've created. Okay, so we can start taking these away. And now we're getting more of an idea of the shape that Carl is going to be having. All right, so it's going to be slightly dipped into the front and then receding away. All right. Okay, so we've been creating the shape, and now we're at the point of we need to agree it with the client. You know, is he happy with that shape? Does he want to like make any adjustments? But because we've still got our 5 points in place, we can make all the adjustments off there if we need to. Okay, so at this point, I will give the client the opportunity to look in the mirror. Does he want to make any changes, or is he happy to proceed? All right. So there you go. That's with it slightly receded off now. And then, you know, for me, we're going to be adding a lighter layer like in this front area as well. Just so if you can try and envisage that. Yep. All right. I would actually suggest these side profiles that we don't come all the way around there, and that we just continue this slightly back. Maybe this will come back. You will have a lighter area here, but you don't really want to add too much shape into the sides. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So does the hairline shape look all right for you? So that's this solid line, that's where the darker area will be, and then for the next ½ inch to 1 inch in front of that, that's where it's all going to break out and soften out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So the client's happy to go ahead. So we're going to stick with that shape. So now all I'm going to do is like add in the finer details. And for me, like when I'm adding a softer faded hairline in the front, we know the maximum, because we measured it out earlier, would be to come to this point here. So I can add a little dotted line in around this area. All right, following the shape that I've already created before. And this little area here, this is where I'm gonna, when I do the actual treatment, that's where I'm gonna get creative. You know, that's where it's gonna really fade out and give that sort of rougher, really natural look. All right. So we don't need to get too accurate because we've already got our symmetry in place. On this side, we agreed with Carl it might be better just to take it, you know, and then this area is going to be more faded rather than adding a shape into the side profile. All right, so again, this will be a point where all the other little lines that I've been creating, we can get rid of them now, and then we'll be left with the actual shape that we're going to be using. So when I'm doing the hairlines, I'll be spending plenty of time doing this, you know. It's not like just a quick job. So again, I'll just get back in there. Just making sure everything's in place. Okay, sometimes a thing you can do to make little adjustments with your pen, you can make a thicker line, okay, and make adjustments off of that line by using your white, and you can just edge around the line like that, just to make it look accurate, you know. We want to get it as neat and accurate as we can. Just gives the client confidence in what you're doing then. So another little tip before I step away from the hairline, for me to check it over, it's one thing looking at somebody just eye to eye, but a lot of the time before I sign off on the hairline and decide that's good for me, I'll use my phone on the photo setting. And when you hold the phone and look at it, the person's head becomes smaller instantly. So it's a lot easier to look and make any judgments. You can see, you know, if each point you're looking at is in the correct place of when you designed it. You can come around the corners and the sides, have a little look. Yeah, and if that's looking all good to me, the next thing that I will do is take photos again of each position up the top. I'll take a step to the side. I'll take another step to this side. Okay, and then what that gives me is the hairline, everything's been agreed. I can then go back to the client and I can actually show him, here's your hairline. We can see we've got center point there. All right, and that's in the shape that you was liking. As we flick through, we've also got the view from the top, and you know, so I like to explain to the client the process I've been through to create the symmetry. So I will show him with the ruler, like, you know, you can see each point on the sides, like, creates that half moon, which tells us that we've got the symmetry in place. And then I'll show him on the side profile the same. It's pointing just behind the eye socket. And on the next side profile, you can see it's coming just behind the eye socket again. And off of there, that's where we've worked our shape, all right? So, just to explain to you, so it'll be darker all the way through here and into that side profile, and just line it off of there. Yep. And by doing it like that, that'll give us the option, if later down the line you wanted to edge it forward, create more of a frame in your face, you've still got that option, all right? So this is us staying conservative, and that'll work out looking amazing. All right? Yeah. Sound good? Yeah. Okay, so we've finished the hairline. We're now going to move through to the clinic area, and just before we start the treatment, I'm going to be mapping out. So making little marks of where we need to blend into the natural hair, and I'm going to show you that just before we start the treatment.